Hey everybody, it's Dr. Chance Haugen here, and I want to welcome you to this webinar. And most of you are probably watching this webinar on replay. So I hope you enjoy this. We're going to cover a lot of stuff today in this webinar, and it's all going to be about just the thyroid. And at the end, we're going to give you the 6 tests that you absolutely must have in order to know what's going on with your thyroid. And along the way, I'm going to show you why your thyroid is dysfunctioning and what is going on and the steps you need to take to get that thyroid function back to where it needs to be. So if you're all ready here, let's dig in and let's start to uncover this huge epidemic that's going on with the thyroid. But before we get into the thyroid, we're just going to take a second and I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and why you should listen to me and where I'm coming from. Where does my expertise come from? Well, about 10 years ago, I really was struggling with a lot of health issues, and I couldn't find answers. I had a lot of digestive issues, fatigue, groin pain, night sweats, couldn't sleep at night, and I went to my doctor looking for answers. And we did a routine thing. He told me my prostate was inflamed. He put me on antibiotics for 2 months. And after that 2 months, things got way worse for me. All of my symptoms got worse, and we couldn't really figure out what was going on. So he sent me to the specialist. And we did an ultrasound there, and they couldn't find anything. So it was on to the next specialist, CT scan. Then we did colonoscopy. We did more blood work. And nothing seemed to come back fine. And he finally said, let's do one more test. And it's kind of funny now, but at the time you could probably understand just how mad I was. But they ran a culture, and he said, well, if nothing's wrong, we'll just send you a letter in the mail. And if something's wrong or serious, we'll give you a call right away. Well, I got a letter in the mail like 2 weeks later, and I opened it up, and it said your vaginal pap smear was normal. And so, yeah, that might be funny now, but at the time you can imagine just how upset I was. I'd been through all of this stuff, and I get a message talking and telling me that my vaginal pap smear is normal. So from there, that's really what set me off, and I decided to start looking somewhere else. I stopped with the medical system at that point after we'd spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I don't even know how many, $20,000 maybe invested into it, with no answers and just being way worse. And I actually just put up with it for quite a few years, to the point where I was in practice, I would get so tired at noon I would have to lay down on my table and take a nap at noon just to make it through the rest of my day. And finally I found some doctors who I thought they knew what they were talking about, and I started to, I just went to them and I said, I got to get well, show me how to get well. And I listened to exactly what they had to say. I paid what they told me to pay, because at that point in time I didn't care, I wanted to get well. And everything I learned, I'm going to put most of it into this talk. And so I hope you dig in. If you've never read our best-selling book, Toxic Inflammation, we're going to talk a lot about inflammation in this book because it has a lot to do with the thyroid. And so I just hope you guys really enjoy this. I'm coming from a place where I know where you're at now. If you're struggling with health issues, I have been there. And this has helped me, and it's helped a lot of my patients. And I just hope that you enjoy this and you get something out of it. So for about the next half hour or so, you're going to be with me here, and I know you're going to get a lot of it out of this. And believe me, if you put this to work, you're going to start to see some changes in your life. So the thyroid, it's a massive epidemic right now. According to the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, 27 million suffer from a thyroid condition. Out of that 27 million, only half of them have been diagnosed. That means that 50% of them have symptoms and they don't know what's going on. And so they're having problems, but no one's giving them an answer. Some sources say up to 90% of women aged 40 and up have subclinical thyroid. Dr. Brada Barnes of the Brada Barnes Institute says 90% of American men and women have suboptimal thyroid function. According to the AACA, thyroid conditions are the #1 endocrine disorder in the U.S. compared to diabetes. Now, you all probably know someone who has diabetes, right? Now, just think of that, and, thyroid problems are almost double that. So this is huge. 80% of thyroid conditions are in women. 80% of that percentage have hypothyroidism, and 80% of that are autoimmune. And autoimmune is a big one. It's one of the ones that's getting missed because the tests aren't being run. And we're going to give you those tests to run here towards the end of the talk, and so stay tuned for that. because autoimmune is a big one that's being missed. And so you may or may not know, but thyroid disease predisposes you to many other things. It plays a major role in obesity and diseases associated with weight gain. Older women with subclinical hypothyroidism have 2 times the likelihood of having a blocked aorta or have had a heart attack. 50% of depression could be because of an undiagnosed thyroid condition. And just think of how many people struggle with depression, and it could be because of their thyroid. Studies show autoimmune types of hypothyroidism can lead to psychosis, seizures, dementia, and mood changes. Other hormone problems associated with perimenopause and menopause, including those symptoms that all those women get, can be due to thyroid disease. And so if you can start to fix that thyroid dysfunction, a lot of times you see those menopause symptoms start to get better. And so the majority of these symptoms right here will actually start long before a blood test would come back. So if you get hypothyroid problems, hypothyroid just basically means your body slows down, right? Because your thyroid is your regulator. It controls the speed at what your body is doing. And so you'll start to see weight gain that doesn't respond to diet or exercise. Who's having trouble with that? Sleep problems under fatigue, hot flashes, cold hands, cold feet in general. Depression, thinning of your hair, the outer one-third of your eyebrows, brain fog, dry skin, brittle nails, infertility, constipation. I mean, these are the classic signs of thyroid issues, and we see this a lot. Okay then, so what's the solution? What's going on? Well, it kind of depends who you talk to, right? Your doctor will tell you it's mostly genetic and that there's not much you can do except take thyroid replacement hormones, right, for the rest of your life, more than likely. The sad part is that most people are still having symptoms even when they're on their medication. The truth is that there is a cause to thyroid dysfunction, and when you remove it, the thyroid can begin to function the way it should. And the fact is that our system works great for getting rid of the cause and starting to get that thyroid function back up. And we're going to show you what's causing all of these issues. We have to understand, though, that the thyroid isn't just working by itself. It's an entire system, okay, guys? So you have your hypothalamus, pituitary gland, your liver, thyroid, pancreas. All of these things have to be working correctly, or the thyroid may not work correctly, because it's more than just one system. This is a whole hormonal chain here going on. And so if there's dysfunction anywhere else along the way, it can cause the thyroid to have dysfunction. So you can't look at just the thyroid. So let's talk about some myths and some truths here. So what we've been told is that thyroid replacement hormones such as Synthroid and levothyroxine are the only answers. That's the only thing you can do. Well, the truth is that 80% of the time, thyroid hormone does nothing to relieve your symptoms, let alone fix it, right? If you're going to be on it for the rest of your life, is it fixing what's going on? No, it's not. 80% of hypothyroid is autoimmune, Hashimoto's, and it's not going to respond to synthetic hormones at all. Most doctors don't check for autoimmune disease because the treatment's the same. I think there really is no medication. Like if you have a blood test that comes back and says you're autoimmune, there's no med specifically for autoimmune disease of the thyroid. And so I think that's why this blood test doesn't get done hardly at all. And so what you're told is you go in, your blood work is fine. And they say, so nope, your TSH is great, right? That's what you'll hear. You're fine. There's nothing going on. Maybe it's all in your head. Well, the truth is, before 1971, it was standard practice to evaluate the patient's thyroid condition based on how they felt. Today, though, we're treating the lab and not the patient. So we're just looking at the lab numbers, and if they say they're normal, then they say you're fine. By the time your blood work shows a positive test, you've most likely been having symptoms for 10 to 20 years, at least. Recall that 50% of the 27 million sufferers go undiagnosed, making this the most underdiagnosed condition on the entire planet. Most doctors are going to evaluate your condition based solely on the gold standard, TSH. But here's the kicker, guys. This is huge. No studies, none, zero, zip, have been published demonstrating that you have a healthy thyroid function when your TSH is within normal range. Not to mention the ranges they use for normal tests are based on a thyroid epidemic and not the optimal ranges that we use. And so if you have an entire sick population, remember the numbers we talked about at the beginning, where it said that some of them think that 80% of women over the age of 40 have suboptimal thyroid function? Well, if you take, how do they determine those blood results, those blood ranges? Based on the average population, right? Well, if your average population is sick, it's going to make that blood range huge, and people are going to be having their blood tests coming back, and they're going to be put in that range, and they're going to be told they're fine, and they're really not. And so we use different ranges. We have different optimal ranges that we think people should be in, and we see people in those ranges. Usually, that's when they're going to see no symptoms, because those ranges are the actual normal, not this huge range that we're seeing today. Most thyroid conditions are similar to other hormone conditions like type 2 diabetes. Diabetes, guys, you can't hear glucose real well, right? Uh, or you can't hear insulin, and glucose can't get into the cell, right? And so you actually can't hear the hormone insulin. That's why a lot of diabetics have to take insulin, so they overcrowd their body with insulin so they can hear it, so they can get glucose into their cell. It's very similar in thyroid issues too. The real problem isn't the pancreas or the thyroid gland, it's the hormone receptors on the cell. And so those hormone receptors get blunted, and your body can't hear your hormones. And so you have to get those receptors fixed so that they can hear your hormone. T4 must be converted into an active hormone called T3. T3 is what your body uses. It's what goes into what binds onto the cell to tell your body what to do. However, the conversion of T4 to T3 takes place in your liver, okay, not in the thyroid gland. So if anything is going on with your liver, a lot of times there might be an issue with your thyroid. So they estimate that 30 to 40% of the American population has fatty liver disease, and there's a lot of other issues that can be going on with your liver too. So if something's going on with your liver, you can have thyroid issues. So you can see how this is a complete system. It's not just about the thyroid. Another big one is reverse T3 is produced during times of stress, and it's going to block your active hormone T3. So are any of you under stress? Yeah, probably. And people who are under large amounts of stress, usually that's when we're going to see this reverse T3 be way, way, way too big. And so it doesn't matter if it's chemical, physical, or emotional, any stressor can cause reverse T3 to go up, because the body's really smart. It says, hey, we're dealing way too much with these other stressors right now. We don't have time to be producing T3. And so we're going to have T3 block the T3 receptors. So these are a lot of the tests that we like to have done. And I'm going to write these down for you once again at the end of the talk here. We'll give you all the tests that you need to have done. And so contrary to what you've been told, your thyroid works in synergy with the adrenal glands, pituitary, pancreas, and even your liver, and therefore it's got to be looked at as a whole. Even poor digestion and food intolerances can cause thyroid issues, especially autoimmune thyroid problems. This is just kind of a quick summary here of what we've been talking about. So it's possible you might be suffering from an autoimmune type problem. And replacement hormones will not help you with this. It'll improve your TSH numbers, but you're still probably going to have symptoms. And that's when you really need to start looking, is this an autoimmune issue? You could have a hormone receptor problem. You are thyroid hormone resistant, and it's similar to type 2 diabetes, and this is due to cellular inflammation. And I'm going to go into inflammation a lot more in detail here in just a little bit. You may possibly not be converting T4 to T3, and this could be because of a liver issue. Or you could be RT3 dominant, and that's because of a chemical, emotional, or physical stressor. And so out of those four things, how do we start to get out of this? How do we get to fix this? Well, there's two causes that really need to be addressed when we start to talk about thyroid dysfunction. One is iodine deficiency, and two is cellular inflammation. Both need to be addressed in order to get that thyroid function back up. Iodine deficiency alone is the cause of approximately 20% of all hypothyroid cases. Iodine is the most efficient trace mineral in the world. A third of the planet is efficient. According to the National Health and Nutrition Examination surveys from 74 to 94, urinary iodine levels have decreased 50% in the U.S. Populations with the lowest iodine levels have had the highest incidence of thyroid problems and other iodine-related diseases. The good news is other studies have shown that as iodine intake increased, both thyroid conditions, goiter, stomach, and breast cancer decreased. A strong link to cancers of the thyroid, breast, ovaries, uterus, prostate. The World Health Organization claims that iodine deficiency is the world's greatest single cause of preventable mental retardation. Studies confirm iodine deficiency is the #1 cause of underfunctioning intellect. 68.7% of children from moderately iodine deficient areas were diagnosed with ADHD. Iodine is an essential nutrient for the production of thyroid hormones, T4 and T3. However, some feel it can make certain thyroid conditions worse, and others feel you can't get well without it. Well, the truth is that both sides are right. If iodine is given to an autoimmune type of hypothyroid, it can cause a thyroid storm. That means it gets way worse. However, it is true that you won't get well without it, even with Hashimoto's. So what do you do about this? What's the answer? Iodine administered correctly is only one part of our program, and done correctly offers great results. You have to do the proper testing, okay, to find out when you can give iodine. If you have Hashimoto's, we start selenium first to stop the autoimmune reaction, and then we can slowly start in with iodine. If you don't do this correctly, you can get that thyroid storm. But if you start with selenium and then you slowly add in iodine, it's going to help really more than likely not give you a thyroid storm. You can start in really, really low, and you have great results doing that. If you do not have Hashimoto's, according to your test and exam, you can actually start iodine immediately, and you don't have to worry about that thyroid storm. Cellular inflammation is a true underlying cause for 80 to 90% of thyroid dysfunction. So what is it, and why does it cause thyroid dysfunction? Well, just to show you just how big inflammation is, the cover of Time magazine had this to say. It says, when inflammation becomes chronic rather than transitory, the body turns on itself with after effects that seem to underlie a wide variety of diseases. So a lot of things come out of inflammation. Almost every single disease starts with inflammation. So if you're not doing it for your thyroid, start to do it for yourself. You get inflammation under control, and you're going to be a whole lot healthier. And so you've been hearing me talk about autoimmune thyroiditis. And so what does that mean? Well, what happens is you get foreign things that start to bind your thyroid. And I'm going to talk about this in a second. But basically what happens is when something foreign binds to the thyroid, your body sends white blood cells to the thyroid, and it begins to attack that area. And so your body literally begins to attack itself, and you become autoimmune. That's what it means. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Liar Liar with Jim Carrey, but where he beats himself up in the bathroom. That's kind of what your body begins to do in an autoimmune response. It literally starts to beat itself up. And so we have to remove those things so we can get rid of that autoimmune response. And I'm going to talk about that here. And so there's really three causes of inflammation and three things that are going to drive an autoimmune response. And so toxins, bad fats, and sugars are the three main culprits. Bad fats cause inflammation at the cellular level and at the thyroid gland, which affects the hormone receptors and drives that autoimmune response. Studies show a diet high in vegetable oils, which turn rancid during processing, decrease thyroid function by causing inflammation. And so vegetable oils are a bad fat, and there's a difference between good and bad fats, and a lot of people get these confused as to what is good and what is bad. And that's something we help you determine because like for instance, saturated fat. A lot of people have thought that saturated fat is bad, like butter, but it's not. Saturated fat is amazing for you. The Volek study and others have shown that diets high in saturated fat and low in carbs improve weight loss by improving thyroid function. The diet in the study had 50% of calories from good fat, low in carbs, and moderate amounts of protein. It sounds like the diet that we use. And so those good fats actually improved thyroid function. The bad fats decreased it. A study looking at tolerance to cold compared diets high in protein, carbs, and fat. It was only the diet high in saturated fat, due to its effect on the thyroid, that improved tolerance to cold. Grains. Grains are really super sugars, and so in our program, you have to get rid of grains. Whole grains raise glucose as much or more than pure sugar. 2 slices of whole wheat toast increase your blood sugar more than 5 to 6 teaspoons of pure sugar. That's the same as drinking a whole can of soda, guys. So eating 2 pieces of whole wheat toast is exactly the same. It's going to do the exact same thing to your blood sugar as a can of pop. That's amazing, guys. And that's going to spike inflammation in your body. And so for a while, we have to get rid of grains because we have to control that inflammatory response. Toxins. Toxins are the number one cause of thyroid problems. Toxins not only cause inflammation of the cell membrane, interfering with the thyroid receptors, certain toxins can actually bind to your thyroid receptors, blocking your thyroid hormones and driving an autoimmune response. Remember how I said when something binds to your thyroid, those white blood cells come and attack it? So when toxins bind there, the immune system starts to attack those toxins. Studies have confirmed that certain toxins are the main culprits, and we call these the Thyroid Toxic Top 5. There's more than 5, but these are the big ones. PCBs and dioxins, found mostly in non-organic meat and dairy. Studies show these toxins induce thyroid hormone metabolism by altering an enzyme in your liver that metabolizes the hormones. They also directly attack the thyroid gland and the protein that carries the hormone. Pesticides. Numerous studies link pesticides to thyroid disease. There's way too many to count, guys. There's so many that link pesticides to thyroid disease. A recent study published in the American Journal of Epidemiology showed women married to men who use pesticides have almost a twofold increase in thyroid disease. That's huge. They're not even using the pesticides, guys, and they're still getting exposure. Why? Probably because their husbands are bringing it home on their clothes. And so, we're talking about, maybe farmers here, for instance, this is going to affect. And women married to farmers, they can be getting exposed to pesticides and not even realize it. Heavy metals. The heavy metals with a strong link to thyroid disease are cadmium, mercury, and lead. Cadmium from cigarette smoke was one of the most studied. Mercury has been shown to bind to hormone receptors because of its affinity for selenium. Thyroid receptors are selenium receptors, and so mercury has a big affinity for selenium. In studies, mercury has been shown to deplete selenium, which affects the receptor and can trigger an autoimmune response. BPA, which is mostly from plastic and cosmetics, drinking bottles, drinking water. Studies indicate that even at low doses consistent with that an average person would be exposed to, there are changes to thyroid hormones. And they actually banned BPA in baby bottles here just a year or two ago. And so we're slowly starting to catch on to the BPA, thankfully. But still, it may be in your water cooler at work. It may be in places like that. So it's always good to check out. You may be getting BPA exposure without knowing it. Halogens, and this is the big one, guys. They're also known as goitrogens. So fluoride, bromine, and chlorine are known as goitrogens because they can cause an enlargement of the thyroid gland. These chemicals are in the same family as iodine. If you guys remember that periodic table from science class, well, they're called halogens, and they're all in that same group on that periodic table. And so they act very, very similar to iodine, and so they compete with iodine in the thyroid. So if you're getting exposure to fluoride, bromine, or chlorine, they may be going to the thyroid instead of the iodine. And so this is one reason why people need so much more iodine a day for normal thyroid function. Fluoride and chlorine are in the water supply. Bromine replaced iodine in bread in the 1980s and is now in certain soft drinks like Mountain Dew and Gatorade. And there's actually a big push here to get the brominated vegetable oil out of Mountain Dew and Gatorade. And I'm not sure if it's completely out yet or not, but there was a push to get it out, thankfully. It's also used in pesticides, electronic equipment, and fabrics because it's used as a flame retardant. So these are some very toxic things. And actually, what do you guys think is the most toxic appliance in your home, probably? Well, for most of you, it's actually probably going to be your dishwasher. Why is that? Well, if you live in town, you're going to have fluoride and chlorine coming in right from the water supply. You're going to be putting the detergent into your dishwasher. Everything gets going. What happens when it's done? You open it up, and you get that cloud, right? That smoke, that steam starts coming out. Well, what's in that steam? Your fluoride, your chlorine, and whatever is in that detergent. That you breathe it in right to your bloodstream through the lungs, and now you have those chemicals in your body. And so chlorine, like for instance, chlorine gas was actually used as a bomb in World War I. And so at high levels, we know this stuff can be very, very toxic. And so if you're getting it in your dishwasher, here's another thing. Where else do you think you're putting it? Your long hot showers, right? Your fluoride and chlorine gas, you're sitting there breathing in all that steam from the shower. So this is why it's so important to have your water filtered, guys. If there's one thing you can do, just taking away from this today, get your water filtered. Make sure your drinking water is filtered. Because it'll help you out a lot. So there's three main problems with cellular inflammation. It does some things, right? So one, if you're inflamed, you can't get nutrients into the cell needed for normal cell function. Toxins can't get out of the cell, and they can actually start to trigger genes. This is known as epigenetics, and it can actually drive things like autoimmune thyroiditis and cause more cellular inflammation. And three, receptors on the cell membrane become blunted, and then they can't hear your hormones, and you can't hear your thyroid hormones, and that's why we have to get rid of the cellular inflammation. So speaking of inflammation, we love to do a test when you come in to look and see how inflamed you are. And this is one of the best tests we do. And we can actually monitor as you go along how inflamed you are and are we getting rid of inflammation. So we do a meta-oxy test on everyone on their first visit when they come in so we can monitor just how inflamed they are. This is a very important test, a test that I love doing on people so we can see exactly where they're at. Another thing we do is a VCS test. It's a toxin test, and it's actually for biotoxins. So maybe you're not having thyroid issues. Sometimes people can have biotoxic issues where they're actually fighting maybe a mold or a Lyme, something that's living. And so we don't want to go after and start looking at thyroid issues if it's something else. So we use this test to determine if we're missing something. Is it actually a biotoxin instead of a thyroid issue? Because these biotoxins can look and appear very similar to thyroid issues. So we always want to distinguish and find out exactly which one it is. So this is another test that we do on every person when they come in, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. So cellular inflammation, how do you get rid of it? What are the three main solutions? Well, one is diet. If you're not willing to change your diet, guys, and it's not as hard as it seems. There's still a ton of stuff you can eat, but you have to change your diet. And you have to make this a habit because there's a lot of things that we're doing that we have to change. But diet is the main one. We have to change our diet or you're not going to get well. Two, a lot of people are going to need a protocol. They're going to need iodine. They're going to need lipid therapy to regenerate cell membranes and restore cell function. Not everybody. Maybe some people could just use a diet. But a lot of people are going to need a protocol in order to start to restore that thyroid dysfunction. And three is a true cellular detox. You have to start to remove that cause of the thyroid condition. So if you are struggling with toxin issues, we have to get rid of them. We have to get them away from that thyroid gland, or you're going to continue to have thyroid issues. And this is the exact same thing that I did in order to get well. And this is the same thing we use with all of our patients, and this is how we get rid of inflammation in the body. As you get inflammation gone in the body, those cells can start to regenerate, and you're going to start to see a change in your symptoms. So here's the test that I was talking about. These are the main tests that we have people do, or the ones that we think that you should have done if you believe you're having thyroid issues. And so thyroid antibodies is a big one. This is what you're going to use to evaluate for autoimmune disease. And the two best tests that I like for this is one called thyroglobulin, and the other is called thyroid peroxidase. And some testing companies don't call it thyroid peroxidase. But those are the two main ones, thyroglobulin, thyroid peroxidase. So ask for those ones when you're in, because 80% of hypothyroid issues are autoimmune, right? Serum selenium, we don't always do this on everybody, but in some cases we do, just depending on what's going on with them. Free T3, you should have this one done, just so you know exactly how much active thyroid hormone you have in your body. T4, you should have that done, the free T4. And when you look at the free T4 to free T3, you can start to see, is there something going on with the liver? And that's why we like to be able to compare those. Is T3 getting into the cell? TSH, most people already have that one done by the time they come to us. And so that's another great one to have done. But remember, there's better ranges for some of these tests to have done. We like to see different ranges than the ones they're using. And you could be told you're normal when really it may not be in the optimal range. And so sometimes the numbers need to be a little bit different. Reverse T3, another great one that you should have done. It's important to evaluate stress, chronic toxicity, and adrenal function. So if you're having any issues with that, reverse T3 needs to be done. There's also a few other tests that we like to have done. Heavy metals, I do on every single patient just because of mercury levels. They love the selenium receptors to the thyroid, so if you have high levels of mercury, it could really be blocking that thyroid function. And food intolerances, any type of gut issue can really drive inflammation throughout the whole body, not just the gut. And so I really like to look at digestive issues as well. And so these are the main tests that you should be having done if you think you're having thyroid issues. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk, but let's just stop for a minute here and let's just ask the question, why are you here? What brought you here? What made you listen to this whole presentation? I really hope you enjoyed it. But something must be going on where it's affecting your life, whether it's affecting your relationships with your family, you're not able to hang out with your kids like you like. Maybe it's affecting the relationship with your spouse. Maybe you're not able to get out and do the activities that you want, or just the way you feel with the depression, anxiety, those types of things. It's really holding you in. Maybe it's the weight gain. Maybe it's not being able to just have the energy you want. These things don't have to be that way. You have the ability to make these changes. And believe me, if you put into place what we taught you here in this talk, that can happen. You can have these changes. It's not just one in a million. It's not just, it's just right for that one person. You can make these changes and you can see great results, and your life can start to get better from where you're at today. But you have to take the action to do it. One of the biggest questions that we get asked, okay, so I can do these things by myself. You could take a lot of these things and implement them and do them by yourself. And if you do that, I hope all of you do that in some sort of way. And some people want help. They want to do, they know that they're going to need more in-depth help. And that's where we come in. If you want our help, this is kind of what a first visit with us looks like. We take you through those toxicity tests we talked about, inflammation tests we talked about, the VCS and the meta-oxy. We go over any test results that you've already had done, and so you may not need a bunch more tests. If you do, we'll show you where to get them. We go through what's called a neurotoxic questionnaire with you. It's about the most comprehensive exam and questionnaire you've ever had, because we're going to go through your whole life and kind of pick it apart. We'll determine what other tests you should have. Are there other things that need to be done to figure out what exactly is going on? And we'll answer questions that you may have on the diet. And is this something I can do, or is this something I'll struggle with? We're going to help guide you through that. And so this is kind of what a personal evaluation with us looks like. It actually usually takes us about an hour and a half just to go through all of this because it's so in-depth. And so if you ever want that, that's what working with us kind of looks like on a first visit basis. And some of you may not want that, and that's fine too. But from here on, right now you basically have three choices. One, you can take this information, implement it. Really, you have four choices. You can do nothing. You could just take it and decide not to do anything with the information. I hope you don't do that. Hope you at least do something. You could take the information, implement it, and start to do some of this stuff on your own. For those of you who know that you need more, we offer help in two ways. One, for that personal evaluation that we talked about, we charge $149 for that. And you can come in and we can go through that health history and we can break things down for you and explain it and lay it all out. For those of you who don't really have that trust level yet, you don't really understand who we are or what we do offer a consultation too. That's $27. And so if you don't feel comfortable yet or you want to meet us, you can certainly do that. And so those are the two options if you ever want to work with us. Our phone number is right there, 320-585-1010, and they'll be happy to set you up with a time, whether you choose a consultation or personal evaluation. If I don't get to meet you, I hope this information changes your life. I hope it was of value and you learn some things from this. And if I do get to meet you, I can't wait to meet you, because believe me, we're going to make some changes for you and you're going to start to see some results. There's very, very little downside to this and tremendous upside. So I can't wait to meet you guys. Once again, I hope you enjoyed it, and God bless. Have a great rest of your day.